Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, your ultimate resource for developing a successful veterinary practice and career. I'm Ryan Davies, Digital Marketing Advisor with Equal Marketing and one of the co-hosts of the Veterinary Business Podcast. On this podcast, we bring you insights and expertise from industry-leading doctors, experts, and thought leaders, covering a wide range of topics around practice management, marketing strategies, leadership development, HR, AI, law, and so much more. And whether you're a practicing veterinarian, a practice owner, a practice manager, or a student studying to be a veterinarian, this podcast is tailored to help you navigate the unique challenges and opportunities in the business of veterinary medicine. Every listener of this podcast is welcome to visit www.veterinarybusinessinstitute.com for additional resources and tools to support your growth. And remember, you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Music, Spotify, and all the other popular podcast platforms. Today, I am very excited to chat with Dr. Michele Forbes, an accomplished business owner and DVM at Compassionate Care Animal Hospital, on our topic, balancing cost, quality, and access in veterinary practices. Dr. Forbes, welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much, Ryan. I am very happy to be here.
I am very excited to have you here. It's been a while. We talked about doing this, it feels like a couple months ago now, and we're finally here recording today. I'm very excited for this one because last time you and I had a conversation, we just had a very passionate, open conversation about the industry and everything going on. So when we kind of came across what are we going to do for a topic? We were talking about so many different options here to go through.
There's a lot.
I think
there's so many things.
Right. And I think there's, like you said, there's so much happening in the industry, but I think this is a great sort of intro. And like I said, I have a feeling this will be more than just part one of our conversations, but enabled to balance kind of all of these important factors. Before we do that, though, maybe tell us a little bit about your background and your journey to becoming a veterinarian.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks. So I actually was not the kid who started at 5 years old wanting to be a veterinarian, right? Like I always loved science. I liked medicine. Didn't know I wanted to be a veterinarian until I was actually working for Ford. So I did a business degree, started working for Ford, and I was calling on a dealership on the south side of Chicago, and I found a little puppy. He waltzed into the dealership, and he changed my life. He was a super sick puppy. He was the, $5,000 stray. So the free dog that cost $1 million in medical care. In the process of taking care of him, I realized that I loved it and the profession. So I quit my job and went back to school and then went to vet school. And here I am. So eventually owning a practice was really just blending the two worlds for me. So it allows me to use my business background and it allows me to practice the medicine I like to practice, which is really what it's all about.
Amazing. And I think that's why you're such a perfect guest for us in this sense, because you've got a very strong business acumen and you see it from that side. I know a lot of practice owners, and partners in practices, they come in with the passion of veterinary medicine, but that's a lacking piece, or the other side, right? And I think we're seeing that. And we're going to talk about that here, where a lot of investment is going into this area and they see the business of veterinary medicine and not the compassionate care. And I'm just going to tread on your name with that, with Compassionate Care Animal Hospital, that it takes place. So maybe talk a little bit about that too, of that balance, and really what are your core values to your practice? Because I think that's really important. And one of the things that I feel like connected really well with you with when we had our conversation.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks. I agree. So really, it came down to, I'd been practicing for several years. I had been working for other people. I did emergency work. So for the first 12 years of my career, I did emergency and I loved it. I really came to a point, though, where I was very frustrated with the environment, with the way decisions were being made. And exactly to your point, Ryan, the people I worked for were wonderful people. They were passionate about the profession. They did not have a business background. And I felt like I could see ways to do it differently. So in 2015, it was either leave the profession altogether, which sadly, I think a lot of people are deciding to do now because there are frustrations, or create something that I envisioned and I could stand by and say, like, this is my little corner of the world. This is the way I want to create this space for veterinary professionals, for clients and their pets. So we opened Compassionate Care in 2015. And really the mission was quite simple. I wanted an environment, well, it seems simple on the surface, not so simple in execution, right? So I wanted an environment where veterinary professionals could come together and practice the medicine they wanted to practice, be passionate about it, feel good about what they were doing. And I wanted from families, pet parents and their pets to be able to come in and get the care they needed, and to do it in a positive environment where it was respectful. I really focus a lot on respect for each other as coworkers and clients towards us, and us towards clients. It's like, it's all part of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So it really was quite simple in ideology. It's super complex in execution. And there's so many layers to what that means to provide that kind of care, to create the environment where everybody can feel good about coming to work. My experience was that, and you probably see this too in dealing with so many different practices, veterinary professionals are some of the most awesome people on the planet.
Yeah.
We really are. Like, I am always proud to meet other people in my profession. Like, I feel humbled by the people I share this profession with, because they are phenomenal human beings. Like, we could say they're almost as good as dogs, right? Like,
Yes.
they are really, really fantastic people. And I think that there's been a lot of frustration just in small practices, maybe with misguided people who didn't really know how to run a business. There's a lot of tensions, there's a lot of gossiping, there's just a lot of stuff, a lot of toxicity in environments that I was trying to work my way out of. So that's how I got here. I'm still working on it. I think every day it's a step closer and closer to what that looks like. The context of all of that, though, is which is crazy. When I opened the practice in 2015, it didn't seem that far-fetched to open my own practice as an individual. Just, hang up a
Mm-hmm.
shingle and say, this is my little piece. The market research fit where I opened my practice in Ann Arbor, Michigan. There are a lot of animal hospitals, but in my little area, it seemed like there was a gap. And I had no money. Bank of America believed in it. I went to them, knocked on their door and said, hey, I think I'd like to do this. And they were like, yeah, sounds like a good idea. What makes me sad is that the landscape in veterinary medicine has changed so much that I don't know that that's doable today for somebody who wants to just open up a practice in their corner of the world and hire a few people and create something that they consider to be beautiful. And the nice thing about veterinary medicine is there is room for all of us. The way I practice medicine and the way that I created my hospital is not what someone else may do. And I'm not for every client, right? Like, not every client
Yeah.
wants to come see me. And that's the beauty in having those individual practices, is that we all get to contribute in our way. And the landscape has changed so much, and there's been so much corporatization. And it's crazy to think about how much has changed in 9 years since we opened. And I'm really passionate about trying to preserve the opportunity to create something like I created. It's a ton of work. It's every day, all day. It's also my passion, and I love doing it. I can't imagine doing
Yeah.
it any other way. And I think other people deserve that opportunity. The
Absolutely. And you
flip side
talked
to all
about,
of that. Oh, yeah, please
oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. No,
Oh, I was
keep
going to say,
going.
the flip side to all of that is that it's really important for clients to also feel like they connect with their veterinarian in their
Yes.
hospital.
Yeah.
The number one biggest compliment I get, frankly, is when our clients, we live in a community, just background, we live in a community where a lot of people come in and out, right? They're coming in for doing a PhD or a master's. So they're here for maybe 3 or 4 years, and then they're going off to some other place in the country or world. The biggest compliment I get is when our clients, after being with us for several years, come to us and say, I'm moving, I have a residency in California or Boston. The most stressful part about the entire thing is leaving you as my veterinarian. Like, that's huge. Of all the things that they have to face in moving, the thing that stresses them out the most. I had a client who's moving recently. If she hears this, she's going to know who she is. She was more stressed about telling us that she was moving than anybody else in her personal life or family. Like, like, those are important connections, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that ties together with a comment you said a little bit earlier, which we could drill down on a bit, is this, I don't want to say an exodus away from it, but this movement that's starting to have, where people are losing that passion. Maybe they're having frustrations with it due to a view of profitability and commoditization of the industry, right? If we want to call it like
Absolutely.
that, right? So
Absolutely.
that's really challenging for the industry to deal with. Um, and I guess, with that in mind, like, I guess that's one of the biggest things that really you bring to the table, like you said. And one of the things to remember is this continuity of, you're going to see the same person who understands your pet and becomes like one of the, primary caregivers to your household and your family, that you feel is starting to shift away from the industry. Any like comments or anything further on that to kind of drill down on there?
Absolutely,
And we
Ryan.
could
This is
do we could
something
do
that
multiple episodes on this, I
I think
think.
a whole year-long series. Um, this is actually a really passionate issue for me because I see so many people moving towards relief work, and there is absolutely a role for relief work. And I don't want to disparage the part the what relief work offers to the industry. Like, I don't want to
Yes.
take that away. What I do want to say though is I want to hold this little space for exactly what you're talking about in that continuity of care and getting to know a family and getting to know a pet and getting away from that. And I think that people go to relief work because of the frustrations of the work environment, and they don't even realize that that's not the cure. Because really, my well and many of the coworkers I have at the clinic, our wells are filled when we make those connections and we are a part of the fabric of that family. And they do, I, I literally get chills when I walk into a room and someone says, "Oh, thank God I did not realize you were here today. It's so good to see you, Dr. Forbes. This is what's going on with my pet." Like, that's meaningful. And if you don't have the opportunity to cultivate that because you're so
Yeah.
desperately trying to flee from one toxic environment to another, and you're like, "I'm just going to do relief because I just want to dabble and get out," you're, as the veterinary professional, I feel like we are shortchanging our own experience because we don't get that. It's not just about the client feeling comfortable with us, it's about us feeling needed and feeling that sense of like, I've done something to make an impact. So I think that's huge, and the continuity of care is critical. I had a patient years ago. Bella has since passed away, unfortunately, but I had a patient years ago, German short hair pointer, who was bananas at the clinic, right? Like bouncing off the wall, super sweet, but just like, take German short hair pointer, multiply that times a million, and this is Bella on a normal day. And mom called, Bella's acting really lethargic. And she came in. To anybody who did not know Bella really, really well, she looked like a crazy healthy dog. She came in, she was bouncing off the walls, but I could tell that she was bouncing just a little bit less. Like, to me, I was like, "Oh yeah, no, she is lethargic." And everyone's looking at us like, "Are you guys crazy? Like, are we looking at the
Yep.
same dog?" She's like bouncing off the walls, but it was not Bella bouncing off the walls. She was extraordinarily sick. She had a grass on that migrated into her lungs. Like, she required a week of intensive care and she would have otherwise died. Anyone else who was just there for the day would have been like, "This lady's crazy. Her dog is fine. Go home." It's important. It matters. And that's just from the patient side. And then you have the clients, especially like end of life, like they're looking to you to give them guidance. You have to have a
Yeah.
relationship with them to help them through that. It's
Yep.
huge. And when we start focusing more on the policies and the procedures and the different locations and being interchangeable, I know a lot of the corporate hospitals really rely on being able to plug in, like they have a team and then they kind of plug in the doctors where they need to be. It changes that. It changes that
Yeah.
landscape.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that story just resonates with me. I have a German short hair pointer, and she did just
Okay.
recently get to have that drop, right, where everyone else is like, "Oh, she's nuts," and it's like, no, but she's not nuts, right? And it's like, no, so she does have a heart condition now, and everything else that got
Yeah.
diagnosed and spotted. But it was like exactly that level where they brought her in, and they're like, "Claire's like quiet," and we're like, "Yeah," and everyone else would be like, "Are you kidding me? She's gonna like rip their halty right off her face, like she's pulling and
Yes.
jumping and wants to," but there was something there, right? So I mean,
Yes.
that's a mess that just resonates so well. And I know you and I both have Jack Russell Chihuahua crosses too. I
Yep.
mean, it's
Yep.
lots of connection here, anyways. But I totally hear that. And then my last one that we just put down,
No.
same story, right? Like, I wanted to have that. What do I do? And they finally were like, "Look, we're not going to make the decision for you, but I will give you what I think and what you can expect."
Right.
And I did the wrong thing with the whole, I'm going to take her home one more time, right? And it was like, yeah,
Yeah,
okay, regret doing that. But at the same time, it was great to hear. Whereas if I didn't have somebody that didn't know Meg very well, I would have had
exactly.
the, I don't believe you, I don't trust you, I don't know. Or was I going to get somebody who's like, look, you can go through this treatment and this and pay all this and da da da. And
Exactly.
I'm not doing the right, I'm not doing the dog any justice, who's given me 13 years of great companionship. And now, she's a
Exactly.
big dog and she can't get up anymore. So what's going on? Right.
Right.
So I think
Right.
it's so critically important. Tell me though, how you're successful in balancing cost and quality of care and doing this, because we talked about this leading into this, right? About how
Yeah.
that is a challenge too for the people that are now, I mean, we're in an economy where everything has gone up except wages, and especially in this
Yep.
industry, same thing, right?
Yep.
Everything is costing more, supplies are costing more, your overhead is more, people
Yep.
have less money. How are you able to balance that successfully as a private practice? Because I think, again, that's
Yep.
where, if you're not part of a private practice, you're looking at an Excel spreadsheet and going,
Yep.
none of this, cut this, do this, right? So, so
Exactly.
critical. I'd love to get your thoughts on that as well.
So I think at the end of the day, I personally have taken quite a hit over the past 2 years. That's the bottom line, is that I have to sit down and really make a decision about what's important to me as a person. Do I want to be rich and have the money, or do I want to sleep at night and know that I'm making a difference? And for me personally, it's not going to be the same answer for everybody. For me personally, what drives me and what motivates me and what makes me feel better, and frankly I just feel like that's just what I need to do, is to make a difference and to make a decision that is best for my team, for the client, and for the patient. And of course I need to have my costs covered. I do have to often explain to families why things cost what they cost, and that in and of itself costs me money, right? Like, it's crazy to think about how much time we spend going over treatment plans, explaining costs, and that
Yeah.
doesn't bring in money. So we really have to think about, when you look at the business, you have to look at every square foot of the hospital. How much money does each square foot bring us? And time. That's our thing. Like, people sell socks, I sell time. And for every minute that I'm spending going over an estimate or a treatment plan and explaining the cost of something, I'm not bringing in money. I could be doing something else. I could be seeing another patient. So it is a balance. It's crazy. And I think more than any other industry, we really try to, at least in our clinic, we really try to hold people's hands. And I know I have other colleagues who are doing this as well. We really try to hold people's hands through the process of explaining those treatment plans. It can get pretty outrageous though, and clients can take it to an extreme that is infuriating. I had an emergency surgery. I saved a dog's life. It worked out great, and the end bill was within the treatment plan that we offered the woman before the surgery, but
Hmm.
she didn't like that each line item didn't line up. Like, the surgery time was a little bit longer, and then there were fewer injections. So in the end, the amount of money she was spending was still within the treatment plan, but she still felt like I was scamming her because the surgery time was different or the injections were different. And I finally just had to throw my hands up and say, like, listen, I saved your dog. I don't know what else to tell you. I can't
Yeah.
explain this anymore, right? So it's not just balancing cost, it's also balancing our time and our sanity and making decisions. Sometimes I will just say, this is not a good fit. Where would you like me to send your records? Because I can't continue having this
Yeah.
conversation. And then I do have the people who are just the most lovely individuals, and they come and right out of the gate, they say, I have cost concerns. Can you please walk me through this? And I will go to all ends of the earth to help them because they're upfront. They explain where they're coming from. So a lot of it, Ryan, boils down to accepting that a lot of our time goes into building those relationships, explaining what we do, and trying not to get frustrated about it. And then also charging appropriately. I charge appropriately. I cover my costs and I charge appropriately. Now, a lot of that goes to my team because I believe in paying a livable wage. I'd like to pay them more. So as costs have gone up, I've passed that through in wages. I don't take much more for myself. But that's just my choice. I like to do that because I feel like veterinary assistants, veterinary receptionists, kennel help, and veterinary technicians. And can we just take one split second to explain to everybody, anybody who is listening, that a veterinary technician, that title should be reserved for someone who has gone to school and is credentialed and is therefore a technician. Anybody else should be called a veterinary assistant. And that is something that I will stand on that soapbox all day long, because it is the equivalent of walking into a human hospital and calling everybody who works there a nurse. Everybody, regardless of what their education is or their credential status. That's just a little
Very
aside. Sorry.
important. No, I love that. I think, and again, I think that's part of the nuances of this industry, right? Is the fact that there
Exactly.
are many different things. I actually had an interview. My last week's podcast was with somebody who's a like a master certified groomer, and they're like, everybody can call themselves this, but there's a big
Yes.
difference when you go through certain training and that you
Yep.
can provide certain educated insight that doesn't get, or treatment that doesn't. So yes, I think it's interesting how there's a lot of co-opting of terms that shouldn't be co-opted and things. Again, a
Yes.
whole nother
Yes.
episode I'm sure we could
I
record
know.
on that
I
as
know.
well.
I know.
With,
So I think at the end of the day, the cost is a struggle, right? I mean, I think the answer to your question, a very long-winded answer to your question, I apologize, is it is a struggle. And as a private practice, I pay at least twice as much for my supplies as Banfield or VCA or some of the larger corporations that have purchasing power that I don't
yeah,
have. And it doesn't make any sense to me. It's no more expensive to sell a good to me than it is to them. They just sell more of it all at once to them, and they get a significantly reduced cost. However, the product that the client is paying for is not less expensive, right? That
right,
margin is not to provide more affordable care to a client. And that bleeds into the access to care issue, which is I am very concerned about access to care. I am not the person who thinks that owning a pet or having a pet as a family member is a privilege reserved for those who are wealthy enough to pay for the most outlandish emergency situation, right? I think that the average family should have the privilege of owning or having a pet as a family member and being able to pay for food and vaccines and preventative care and have a nice little something set aside for emergencies. But that nice little something is now $10,000. Like that's mind
yeah,
boggling. We're going
yeah,
to price out families from having a cat or a dog. And I think that people deserve to live with pets. It's a really important part of who we are as human beings. And I don't want that to just be the people who have $10,000 to pay for the emergency. And some of the emergencies now at emergency hospitals, it's breathtaking to see what people pay
yeah.
um, for care, and the stress of not being able to pay for that. And really, like, do we really want people to have to sit down and say, should I adopt or purchase this dog? Do I have $10,000 right now to pay for an emergency? Like, that is just, I, I
It's
don't want
crazy.
that to be the case. I don't want that to be
No,
the case.
exactly.
And at the end of the day, the benefit of having multiple locations like some of these corporations and then getting some purchasing power with their supplies, that's a nice opportunity to improve access to care, but that's not happening. They're more expensive than what I charge, and I'm paying more for my supplies. So, like,
Yeah,
how do we, that math doesn't math, as they
right,
say. Like,
exactly.
that's,
Yeah, yeah. And I mean,
mm-hmm.
there's been countless studies done on terms of things like, and I can directly talk to people that I know that said, like, without my cat or without my dog, I wouldn't have survived COVID. I wouldn't have
Yes.
been able to go through lockdowns and have just me walking around I needed
Yep.
some companionship, right? And there's
Yep.
been so many studies about that have been done about like the cost of mental health and the cost of physical health, just because you have something to care for, a pet
Yeah.
to care for, whatever else, and the companionship comes back to you, in multiples, right? So I agree. Like, this is something that's very important for people to have access to, and then with that, people need to have access to the care that comes with it within a reasonable, within reasonable ranges. And maybe one of the things I'd like to ask about too is, because we kind of touched about it here a little bit, is maybe some of the misconceptions that pet owners are commonly having over cost and quality and speed of care. And I think, again, private practice versus like equity backed or thing. There's a difference there, like you said. It's not like they're, hey, this is discount vet warehouse over here where we're churning, but there's still these ideas like one is better, or one is, you're getting a different level of care because it's in a bigger, shinier building or something. Like, maybe
Right.
talk to me about that a little bit as well.
That's a really that's a really interesting question, because sometimes I do actually look at other practices that are like corporate owned, or I see pictures of corporate owned, and I think, I wonder. And just again, background: our hospital looks very nice. We just went through a remodel. It's not some of these corporate hospitals, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's not who we are. And sometimes I look at that and I think, wow, like, do clients look at us as less than when they walk through the doors, because we're not that shiny, pretty, beautiful place with the special cafeteria or the garden and all that? We don't have that. So it's interesting that you bring that up, because I do have a little bit of that. Like, that's just sits in the back of my mind. I think there is a huge spectrum of care, or had been a huge spectrum of care. Unfortunately, what's happening is that's becoming narrow and narrow, and I think that's why there is an issue with access to care. So, back in the day, you could have anything from the one or two doctor practice that maybe had just a few employees, and they might not practice the same medicine than I practice with 5 or 6 doctors and 30 team members, right? And that's okay, because it provides access to care. What's important to recognize, though, is that the care you're getting at a smaller practice, and I shouldn't just say one or two doctors, but at a lower cost practice with maybe less staffing and less overhead, that quality of care is absolutely going to be different than what you're getting at like my practice with 30 members, and we're AHA accredited. So we're AHA accredited, we're fear-free certified practice. That's going to be a different cost. It is absolutely going to be a different level of care. I don't really know. I don't have personal experience with how that translates into then going to a corporate hospital. I don't know how much more a corporate hospital provides than me. I can't imagine much more, because we're AHA accredited and fear free certified. Like, we're
Yeah.
doing all the things. Where it does make a difference is when you're going to the level of something like surgery intervention, critical care, emergency. That's a whole different level of care, like
Yeah.
animal, medical center in New York, that kind of thing. That's a whole different level of overhead. I think it's really important. And one of the perfect examples is people like to really have a lot of passionate conversations about like spays, neuters, dentals. And I can go to this practice and have my dog's dental done for $200, and you're a ripoff because you're charging me $1,200, because, ours is definitely more expensive. But it's important to understand that dental A is not dental B, and dental B is not
Right.
dental C, right? So if you might not have a technician, and going back to, you might not have a credentialed technician doing anesthesia or doing the dental itself. You might not even have a doctor in the building. I worked for a practice when I graduated that didn't even have a doctor in the building when
Wow.
the assistant, not a technician, started the dental procedure, and that was $250. Well, yeah, you got what you paid for. And
Right.
does it work out most of the time, and do those pets get care? Sure. Does it also end in catastrophic results? Yup. Like, both things happen. So I think all of that is in the mix, and what people don't understand is that that's the pot that you're looking at when you're looking at veterinary medicine. It's not all apples and apples and apples. It's huge. And then you just layer that with all the corporations coming in and trying to buy up what they can, or the de novo
Yeah.
clinics, coming in and saying like, oh, veterinary medicine is all messed up. It's all bad. We're going to start from scratch and just present you with this new way of doing things. It's crazy. And then how
And
much
I think,
energy does any of us have to explain this over and over and over again to the
right.
clients? And it's more entertaining. There's more of a dopamine hit to go to social media and just complain about how expensive veterinary medicine is, and it's a scam, and you're just off to the races.
Yeah. And I think that's the hard part, right? Is that putting on display what your credentials mean, why you're different, and having people understand that, because people go to lowest common denominator, which is always price in this industry, right? Of what it is.
Yes.
And, it's that
Yes.
comparison of, well, you can get sushi from a gas station or you can get sushi from a 5-star Michelin star restaurant or whatever, right? They're different experiences, but in essence, they're the same thing. And are you going to get full off of them both? Probably. Are you going to get nutrients from them both? Sure. Is one of much better experience than the other and better quality? You better hope so, right? So
Right.
you got
And
it,
could
but
you get
it's
food
so tough.
poisoning from one? Yeah.
Yeah, right. But it's so tough to get that understanding here because people
Yeah.
just see, yeah, I'm getting my dog's teeth cleaned. So why what do you do? Do it differently? That doesn't make sense. Like it's teeth cleaning. And you're like, no, it's not like the difference between Crest and Aquafresh toothpaste or whatever else,
Exactly.
right? Like this is how it's performed, and how, if they're, are they sedated, are they not? Is there this? Is there that? Like is it
Yep.
all this level of care that comes into play, and it's so difficult to be able to do that and communicate that. But again, that's where I think, again, like you said, you have to be comfortable with the fact that you might not be for everybody, and you've got to be
Right.
able to
Right.
stay with that and go, hey, you know what, if that's what you're looking for, that's fine, but that's not me. This is why we choose to do it this way. This is why we do it. And again, like you said,
That
that can
that's
also
actually,
just be
Ryan,
exhausting.
I,
Yeah.
I want to jump on that because what you just mentioned is exactly the problem that we're facing, because historically access to care didn't feel so dire because there was the lower cost, lower overhead clinic that existed that someone could go to. And if that's what
Yeah.
they can afford, fantastic. I don't want to disparage. My goal here is to not disparage the lower cost, lower overhead clinic, but to acknowledge that that's disappeared. Like that doesn't exist anymore, except in maybe some rare communities, but that's going by the wayside because
Yeah.
those folks are retiring and no one wants to buy those practices. Corporations don't want to buy them and
Yeah.
individuals can't buy them because they can't find anybody to work at them. So those are folding up. That's the access to care that's going away. Expensive care has always existed. What people don't realize is that we're losing those clinics, and that's where the access to care is feeling like, now what? And
Yeah.
that's exactly to your point. I just sorry to kind of jump in there when you were talking, but I didn't want to
No.
lose that thought because that you made me think of that. Like that's where we're at, and those don't get replaced by corporations. There's no motivation for a corporation to create that low overhead, lower cost clinic. So now what do we do? And
Yeah.
what I think is being proposed is things like telemedicine or
It's
creating a
where I was
master's
going next.
program.
You jumped right on it for me. I was just about to say, that's where innovation comes in, and this efficiency, cost efficiency to quality of care and all of that. And I want to specifically ask you about that. So I'll stop talking again. You can keep going here, but the importance of that as well in the industry. Yeah.
So telemedicine is a fantastic tool. I do it every week. I use it. I did it before it was cool. I did it before the pandemic because I do a lot of behavior and I love seeing my patients in their natural habitat, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Um, it's just that it doesn't replace a hands-on exam and it doesn't replace an in-person experience to at least
Yes.
establish care. And that's what scares me. There's a lot of push towards creating a VCPR, a valid client patient relationship, just with telemedicine. And that is posing a lot of problems. To me, that just seems crazy. You have to have at least some contact and then go ahead and do all the telemedicines you want. I think it's fantastic, but there's got to be contact. The other
Yeah.
piece of this, the other piece of the solution is to create a master's program in veterinary clinical care and create another layer, kind of like PAs in human medicine. There's a push to create veterinary practitioners assistants in veterinary medicine. And we don't even have the infrastructure to have an understanding of what a technician is in veterinary medicine. The last thing we need is to add another layer of practitioner, not to mention the fact that some of the initiatives that are being proposed, the fine print states that those VPAs have to work under a licensed veterinarian, and the licensed veterinarian is responsible for any of mistakes or medical decisions that VPA makes. Well, for veterinarians who are working for corporations, if that corporation hires a bunch of VPAs, those veterinarians are now responsible for those VPAs. That's not what they signed up for when they started their employment with those corporations.
Yeah.
That's a different job, to be responsible for another person's medical decisions. I know we already do it with our VAs and our LVTs, but that's still different than what people will expect from a VPA. And the idea for the VPA is, oh, well, it's going to improve access to care and it's going to make cost of care more affordable. That just that doesn't equate to me.
Yeah.
That's not the solution.
Yeah. I mean, I guess not that I would pin it on you to say what is the solutions or what do you see for success, but like, future trends, what are you kind of seeing that is going to help, again, access
I
to
don't
care?
like any of let me say, I'm an eternal optimist. I wake up every day with the hope of, like, a new day and we can do this, we can do it.
Yeah.
But I don't like I don't like the trends I'm seeing. We're doing more and
Yeah.
more insurance. That's getting stickier and stickier. A couple weeks ago, I had my first experience with a client coming back to me and saying that, I know you want to use that medicine, but my insurance company doesn't cover that one. Here's the list they do cover. Can you pick one of those? Like, that's in 20 years. It's the first time that's happened to me. Don't love that.
Yeah.
So I think insurance is important because I think it's going to be the only way to afford care. But I don't like having to rely on that. So I see insurance becoming a must. The de novo and corporate hospitals are totally taking over. And unless the suppliers actually start providing cost to private practices that they provide to the corporations, I don't know how private practices can survive unless they have a really niche industry or they practice in an area where there's enough money that people can make those choices for themselves. Like where I'm at,
Right.
I'm very fortunate that I live in an area and work in an area that people can make those choices. I really worry about pets and clients in different demographics. Like, I really worry about that. I think that the number one thing that we have to do is standardize who does what. Like, a technician is a technician, they're credentialed, and that's nationwide. And what a VA is, get that settled, and then kind of see where there are gaps in care. But that has to happen before we can do anything. I think we have to do that. And then I would actually love to see more women in positions of decision making, because of course what ended up happening, Ryan, so veterinary medicine over the past 20 years has become predominantly women, and now that it's predominantly women, men own all the corporations that are employing the women, and they are no longer their own, owning their own business and being their own bosses, and that makes me crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's such a weird shift of how it's become and I think that's everything. And I won't go into this whole world business aspect of, well, short selling shouldn't be a thing. You shouldn't be able to sell something you don't own, all this, whatever it is. Right. But that's where we're at now, is the few haves are able to commoditize industries that otherwise probably shouldn't be commoditized, and anything to do with most healthcare or most, pet care or most anything along these lines, right? We're seeing that more and more. And one of the other areas I do a lot of work in is around like aesthetic medicine. Same thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Everyone
Yep.
can be an injector. Everyone can. It's like,
Yes.
no, this
Yep.
isn't right, right? So like, stop, and like, there's got to be standards here. So I agree. Like, the future is, let's not say as bright as it could be, but at least there's, people like you that are understanding and fighting for the right way of doing things and educating people to say, like, look, this is why this is important and this access is important to people, and how to give them options and do all of those things, like you said, that maybe a practice that's running on a spreadsheet definitely wouldn't open up or offer to
Right.
them. With that in mind, and this may be a tough loaded question, what advice would you give to aspiring veterinarians who are considering opening their own practice at this
Oh, I
stage?
would
Is
say
it,
go
again,
for it. A
yeah,
thousand
great, I
percent go
love it.
for it. But you have to be prepared. It is a lifestyle. This is not a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday endeavor. It is a lifestyle. And I talk a lot, I talk a lot about, with my team and my practice manager, a lot about like micro moments. Like, I have to enjoy moments in little chunks. And so I have I have some time that to myself, which is very unusual, but that's my choice. Because I also manage a nonprofit, which has been my workaround for those who can't afford what we do. Rather than doing things at a discount or doing them for free, I started a nonprofit, and then that nonprofit pays for the services. So we're still charging appropriately. People still know the value of what they're getting, but their pet is being taken care of. That's actually what we did for the C-section on Friday, who couldn't get care elsewhere. So I don't have a lot of time, but you have to just appreciate these little micro moments of carving out time for yourself and understanding that owning a business is a lifestyle decision, and there is very little, it's not work-life balance. It's life balance. Like you're in both places all the time. And it's just, you have to be able to do that. But I think if someone wants to open the practice, first of all, let me know. I'll give you a lot of tips. And secondly, I would totally go for it. And I'm hopeful that, pendulums go back and forth. So I'm hopeful that as corporations come in and do what they do, maybe there are going to be opportunities for people to open up small clinics and say, hey, we can do it differently. We can go back to having that one-on-one connection, a little bit closer to the, all creatures great and small kind of idea. That there's a lot of money in pets when it feels like the California gold rush. Like everybody is coming up with their version of how they connect themselves to pets. Walmart is now offering, free telemedicine chats. All these companies are coming up with ways to, Earthwise is another one that came up with a veterinary program where, you can pay them a membership fee and you get $1,500 towards an emergency visit, but you have to be seen within 4 hours and they have to triage it over the phone first. And like crazy stuff that, as someone who is in the industry, I'm like, first of all, you're never going to get seen within 4 hours. Second of all, your pet's just been hit by a car and you're going to get on the phone. Hey, I have to do a telemedicine chat. Can you refer me to it? But people see the opportunity to make money and they are running to it. And so there's lots of opportunity. So I feel like where all of this stuff is happening, I see opportunity. We need more people to come in and do the hard work though, and open up the practices and fight the good fight. Cause
I love it.
Yeah.
Perfect. And you mentioned as well, hey, you've got tips for people. Where can people learn more about Compassionate Care Animal Hospital and maybe the services you provide, and where they can maybe send you an email or something like that to say, Dr. Forbes, help me. You're right. I want to learn more about this. I love what you said about that. What am I doing here? So yeah, I'd love to get that connection to our audience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Compassionate Care has its own website. It's the Compassionate Care Animal Hospital in Ann Arbor. There are a couple others in the country. So mine is Ann Arbor, Michigan. I am also predominantly on TikTok as Dr. Forbes. Going through school, I was always Michael Forbes in roll call. Michael Forbes. So I decided to embrace it. So it's Forbeez, but I'm also on Instagram and the clinic is on Facebook. Anyway, DM and email through the website, whatever, it'll get to me. And if someone is truly interested or, wanting to explore the idea of becoming a veterinarian or a technician, reach out. I am here I want to support the profession and anybody who is interested in it.
I love it. You're such a warrior, such an advocate for the industry, and just so entertaining and fun to talk to. And I have a feeling, I'm really hoping we're going to do this again. Like we said,
I hope so too.
When we did our pre-talk leading into this, we're like, so we've got about 100 topics here. What are we going to narrow it down to? And while we were talking, I was like, I think we just covered 100 more that we could possibly branch off entire episodes to. So I would love to do this again with you. But Dr. Forbes, thank you so much for joining us today, talking to us about balancing cost, quality, and access in veterinary practices. As you mentioned, you don't have a lot of time, but you carved out some of those micro moments for us today. And I can't thank you enough for that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts. And thank you for spending this time with me as well.
That was a lot of fun. Pleasure was all mine. And to our listeners, I have to thank you as well. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we can't do what we do without you. So if you like our podcast, please kindly share it with your colleagues and your friends and family and anybody you can think of on social media. And please don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. It's your reviews and kind words that are going to help other doctors and practice owners find us and help us bring you such amazing guests like Dr. Forbes here to give such wonderful insights into the industry. So until next time, keep striving for excellence and making a positive impact in the lives of your patients and pet parents. And I'm wishing you all an amazing week ahead. Thanks, everybody, and take care.